we are at a moment where sustainability is coming in, and then on top of it, redefining what that really means rather than what is available. It's kind of a reset in a lot of ways to think about, let's focus on the end user. What is critical for them? Let them keep them on the bike longer amount of time. So far, I haven't found a reason to compromise on because it is sustainable, right? So I think that's where I think it's key to be in the front line, really pushing these type of changes. Otherwise, it's a Band-Aid approach. We fix a hole. There's only so much Band-Aid you can put in there eventually, right?
The big innovation here is that being sustainable is not a compromise, right? You don't have to accept lower performance to be sustainable. I mean, here you're actually making a objective increase in performance and you're sustainable. We had to try to engineer the fabric to work best with that level of air permeability. We had to work really hard to not go too high because when you're coming down a descent, it's a really fine line where you get optimum breathability, but not go over to where you're feeling the cold air coming in.
Hello, buongiorno, and welcome to the Castelli podcast, a show where we explore the latest breakthroughs in cycling performance, innovation, and everything that helps you ride further, faster, and more comfortably. Today's episode will take a different twist, as we are thrilled to bring you an exclusive conversation about a true game changer in technical fabrics. Polartec's new fabric technology, AirCore. AirCore is the world's first advanced air-permeable laminate. It's 100% free from PFAS-based chemicals, made from recycled polyester yarns and engineered to keep you dry from the inside out by letting sweat, vapor escape faster than ever. Lightweight, stretchy, windproof, and water repellent. It's a big leap forward not just for performance, but also for sustainability. And to help me unpack how this breakthrough came to life, I'm joined by two key voices behind it. First, Ramesh Kesh, Senior Vice President at Milliken and Company and Business Manager at Polartec. He leads their textile division's R&D and drives the company's big sustainability initiatives. Ramesh actually flew in from South Carolina all the way to Italy just to record this episode, and I found him truly inspiring. And then we have Steve Smith, Castelli's Brand Manager, the one who led the search for better, more sustainable, high-performance fabric, and who played a key role in bringing AirCore into our new product line launching on September 9th. Together, we'll explore the science behind AirCore, the challenges of creating a high-performance yet sustainable material, and why Castelli's new winter line could mark a turning point in cycling apparel. From lab testing to real-world rides, we'll talk about what makes this fabric unique, why it matters for athletes pushing the limits in any weather, and why AirCore might just set the benchmark for years to come. But now, without further delay, let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Ramesh and Steve, which I'm sure you will enjoy. Welcome to the Castelli podcast. First of all, guys, welcome on the Castelli podcast.
Thanks.
Let's kick off the interview with a quick fire round of 4 questions for each of you. And you can only answer with one sentence or a word. You ready? Let's start with Steve. Breathability or waterproof for an all-round cycling jacket? Which one would you choose?
Breathability.
Ramesh, what's the biggest myth about waterproof breathable fabrics?
The 2 words, breathability and waterproof itself, is a myth.
Okay. Steve, how often do you ride in the rain?
Well, I ride in the rain far too often just because I want to go out and test our products. If I wasn't doing this job, it would be pretty rare.
Ramesh, one word to describe AirCore.
Air permeability.
Steve, if you had to describe AirCore in one sentence for a cyclist or athlete listening, what's the biggest thing it lets you do better?
The one word is it's a game changer. It just makes you more comfortable in every condition, especially for when you're riding in the dry conditions, which is most of your riding. It's so much better. But then also, if you do get caught in the rain, it's better there too.
Ramesh, is AirCore environmentally friendly?
Absolutely, it is.
Steve, for the last 4 decades, we have lived with gore-tex, which has been the benchmark. Do you see AirCore being that next benchmark or even higher?
Absolutely. I mean, gore-tex was a good product. It was innovative for its time. I think what we've learned along the way is that gore-tex favored waterproof over all else. AirCore favors breathability with a high level of waterproofness, which is actually better for normal people doing normal things.
Ramesh, last question. Most surprising thing you learned developing AirCore?
I always look at fit, form, and function. I think we looked at real function for a cyclist this time, rather than taking something that's used in other industries and trying to slap it onto cyclists.
Man, I can't wait for this interview now to start. This is going to be an exciting one. Again, welcome on the show. For those of our listeners who might not know who you guys are, Steve, he's been on here for a couple of times, so let's start out with you, Ramesh. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Could you give us a snapshot of who you are and what drives your work?
I'm Ramesh Kesh. I'm the Senior Vice President for Milliken. Also have responsibility for Polartec and government and defense business. So what drives me is really looking for and solving for the real problem for the consumer rather than trying to compromise, right? Band-Aid approach doesn't sit well with me. I want to get to the core of what the root problem is and then fix it. So that's what drives me every day to get up. And now lately, I think sustainability is a big component of everything we do. So sustainability in general with textiles has come with trade-offs. And I think what we have done with this product, end of the day, is that's not the case, right? We have upped the performance level and still made the product more sustainable.
Since how long have you known Steve?
2 years, 3 year and a half. Yeah. 23 June.
So now I'm super curious, Steve. So take me back. We're here today to talk about Polartec AirCore. Take us back to the beginning. What sparked the initial need for new fabric technology? What made you think we need something better than what's out there? And how did that connection or that idea happen then with Polartec and Ramesh?
So with the Castelli GABA Perfetto products, actually most of our winter gear, we've been with Gore Windstopper gore-tex for 20 years almost, and I think we've really pushed that technology, and it's been clear for a while that the waterproof technology using PFAS chemicals needed to come to an end, and so we started actually quite a while ago to try to look for that next thing. And clearly that starts with to see where the major suppliers are going with those products. And it became pretty apparent very early on that everyone was going towards complete waterproofness, but really sacrificing breathability and stretch. It's complicated as we found out. It's easy to make something waterproof. It's semi-easy, waterproof, and sustainable. But when you add real breathability, it becomes more complicated. And so we even tested some products like full waterproofness, but no breathability is like wearing a plastic bag. So we started going the other direction and thinking about what our cyclist is doing. And with modern technology, from home trainers, the fact that we have an up-to-the-minute forecast of weather conditions in our pocket at all times, people just aren't riding in the rain like they used to. And so we started to really shift the goal from waterproof at all costs, which is something we just, because we've been told that for 40 years, we stopped questioning it, right? But then it was like, wait a minute, we don't always need waterproof. We need to be protected. We need to be breathable, which is going to keep us drier, which is going to keep us more comfortable. So we moved that goal to looking towards breathability. But then we started to survey the industry, started to talk to fabric suppliers and really push in this direction. And usually that question was met with a blank stare, or we even had some people still try to sell us a PTFE membranes. It was like, guys, that's stopping. Well, it's not been outlawed yet. And so, we also wanted to talk to Polartec to see where they're going, because of course a leader in protection and sustainability, but just really going more towards this focus to breathability. And when we described this to Ramesh, it was really, he was a first person that you could see that he got it and lit up and was like, yeah, I think we can do that. It still took a little bit, but it was just, I think from that first meeting when we described it, Ramesh really understood what we were trying to get at. We didn't really have the technologies yet to get there, I think. But that key first bit was the understanding.
So that also triggered you then, Ramesh, because I assume you probably have had this request from other brands before, for more breathability. We know how important that is. But you probably didn't have the technology there at the moment. But that triggered you and found this as a new challenge to actually get something going there with your whole R&D team.
Yeah, I think I remember clearly the day we met in Milan. Steve came in after 1:30 in the afternoon. We sat down and described what he wanted. The way he positioned it was very different from other brands. I'll be very open with that. In a sense, it was more keeping the person on the bike for a longer time. Make the person comfortable rather than removing zippers, stopping and doing a lot of things we do today. So I think the challenge part of framing that way started some creative juices to flow. And in fact, I've told Steve, after he left, I started writing down translating what he was asking into what does that mean to the fabric and eventually down to the membrane, right? That's what it comes down to. So I think it's that framing of what the problem was very critical in getting myself to think about how we're going to go there, right? 95% of the time you frame the problem, 5% that you can solve it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember from that day that Ramesh immediately understood the kind of breathability we were looking for, but then immediately went back to the old habits of asking how much waterproofness do we need? What's our goal there for waterproofness? And I remember saying, like, let's get the breathability, and then we'll try and understand what kind of waterproofness we have, because it really wasn't as important in the whole thing, because most cyclists, when it's actually raining, they're pulling out an old style rain cape, like a fully waterproof shell. And so our focus was clearly on breathability. So, but I think Ramesh, you must have asked 3-4 times, like, what's the waterproof? It's like, if we have 1,000 millimeters, that's okay. If we can get more, that's okay. Whatever we can get above that is better, but the focus was on breathability. And so I think that helped us of having a clear view of what we're headed for in breathability. And then we backed into the water protection.
Exactly. So I think the add-on to what Steve just said is, I think the core of the problem, get to that first, and then we started stepping back from there and said, okay, now let's work on whatever waterproofness, or do you need water resistance kind of a question, right? So that kind of helped us to really pivot to the critical issue the cyclist is facing, and then track back to what other properties do we need. Always comes back to that function component I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a back and forth journey between the two of you.
Yeah.
And Steve, were there any moments during this whole process where the project took a surprising turn?
Yeah, I mean, we started off with this fairly aggressive goal in terms of air permeability. By air permeability, we mean that a small amount of air can come through the fabric. And the idea being that air that comes in, if we let a very small amount in, it's not going to make you cold. It's not going to give you a wind chill, because there's no speed to that air that's coming in. So in reality, we're talking about basically, if you have a cube 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters, that's the amount of air that's coming in over a minute. So you have no perception whatsoever of that air coming in. So the goal to get to that level of breathability, Ramesh, I remember you thought it was a big challenge, and also to engineer it to keep it at that level. To get more is quite easy. To get a lot less is quite easy, but we're at a very specific level we're looking for. And so getting to that level, I didn't expect to, but also because I think Ramesh led me to believe it was really difficult. And then the big surprise is that the amount of water protection we were able to give on top of that, because we started out with very low expectations for water protection.
Yeah, I clearly remember, because I think when we left, bottom line was really because we had launched 2 other technologies just before that, and that was so much so focused on waterproofness, right? Yeah. And then talking to Steve and what we need, I knew pretty much that technology is not going to work here, because breathability is kind of a pretty misunderstood word in the industry in a lot of ways. Now we are talking about air permeability, right? that doesn't mean you're not going to get windproofness out of it. So it is tailoring to the exact amount of air, and it is very, very small, but helps with that evaporative cooling that you need to reduce your heat loss. I mean, that's what we're trying to fundamentally achieve.
It is. And we're going to get into that in a second. But doing that whole process, Steve, did you ever come to a point where you said, hey, I have to make some major design changes? Or did you have any aha moments like doing the whole process here? Because you still had to deliver. You were probably, I don't know if you already had in mind that you had this product ready to go to market already for fall, winter 25. That means September this year.
Actually, we designed the products with this phantom fabric that we were hoping to get to. We did have a plan B in case we weren't able to make it in time, but we did want to rush this to market because of the performance gains that we were expecting, and also the sustainability improvements really made it so we were really driven to get it to closer to market. The funny thing about the products that are coming to market, the Perfetto 3 jacket still has ventilation zips, and as we actually got to deeper wear testing of it, we decided we don't really need them. But people have been using Perfetto for a long time; they expect them, so it's almost a superfluous garment feature now. So
correct.
And now we're sitting here in Italy, 2 years later.
Yeah.
The products will enter the markets worldwide on September 9th. That's crazy that you guys managed to come up with a solution that quick.
It sounds crazy, but I think it has been an iterative process and going back and forth with Steve because he wanted what the ultimate product needs to look like. Right? I remember every couple of weeks or months coming back to him and said, okay, here is where we are, right? Here's what the hurdles are. And we kind of talked through where we can get it to. I mean, we almost think of this as a first generation product. There's a lot more to come on this, right? So as we think about that in the sense is, okay, right now, it sounds like 2 years is a very short amount of time, but I think we got to the solution and what we wanted to do very quickly because I think we framed it exactly what we wanted, which is very different than the industry has looked at. Like you said, 40 years, we've been taking what was an outdoor and using it, right? Now we are coming back and redefining the whole sport and how do we keep the person on the bike longer, right? The functionality part is becoming more important.
So big rush getting it to market to get the first prototypes ready and even just have enough fabric for bringing 11 very exclusive bike magazines down to Girona in February 2025 to test ride it for the first time. Before it had only been tested internally. Yeah. And also the outcome for most of all the journalists was amazing. I think they were all pretty surprised because it wasn't that chilly that day that we went riding. And
no, I mean, Girona should be a guarantee of cool mornings and then warming up during the day in February. Unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately, the day that we actually had everyone there, it started off a bit cool, but we were a little bit later getting out the door, and then we climbed up Els Angeles climb, and by the time we got to the top, it was like 16 degrees, I think that's 62 Fahrenheit, so fully sunny day, and just everybody, I mean, of course, everyone opened up their jacket, but any other jacket we've ever worn, we would all have been looking to take it off because it's too hot, and this one, strangely, it still feels good even at warmer conditions. And then we went over the backside and on the descent, there's an area where you go through a place that never sees the sun during the winter, and it got down to 3 degrees, which is like 38 Fahrenheit, and you were still fighting that. So, and just coming down the other side after 3 kilometers where you're completely dry.
Yeah. No, the outcome and the feedback from all the guys was very positive. And I think even surprising, at least to me, I've not been part of this project as closely as yourself, but there were guys that were really looking at, can we get something a little bit lighter for today? And we're like, no, just get in the jacket, let's get going. And a lot of climbing, a lot of descending and coming back. And most of them was like, look at my base layer, it's completely dry. So Ramesh, let's go into some of the technical stuff.
Absolutely.
What makes the AirCore fabric such a breakthrough in fabric innovation and different from traditional windproof and water repellent fabrics?
I think the main component of that is the membrane itself. So obviously when you take PFAS out of that system, it goes against everything Steve was asking. which was very difficult. That was the surprising part. Once we resolved for that, then that feature of trying to tailor that air perm, because you remember it's 3 layers of materials. The membrane contributes majority of the functionality. Then the choice of that fabric that you put in along with it also adds to the point of comfort and everything else. Because one of the things Steve asked for was the stretch component, right? We don't want to wear something that is really tight and plasticky. How do you keep the stretch component to it? So that was the second step of the challenge. I think once we reached a point of agreeing how that composite is going to look like and how you're going to convert to the jacket, then came, like I said, stepping back and looking at that, what the features were, and then now let's work on the water resistance part of it, right? So to me, it was an iterative process. 2 years sounds like a very short amount of time, but I think the quick feedback and evaluations was very, very helpful for us to really go and tailor it, because at the end of the day, we are trying to really fine tune how much air perm you need. You don't want too high, you don't want too low. At the same time, giving enough water resistance to the product itself. That way, it covers most of the needs that you need in the market. So I think I would say it's like layer by layer. We peeled that onion, and at the end of the day, we reached to what our goal was.
Yeah. And I would add that, that air permeability target, we're not including that in the 2-year development time period, because that was another year before that of doing a lot of research, fabric development, trying to find that golden level. Because if it's too low, you get too wet from the outside. If it's too much air permeability, then you have too much cold air coming in. And so, we did everything from going out and trying to ride in every possible condition. We had endless rounds of jackets made to go out and test it, because high humidity, low humidity, high effort, up, down, and everything. And so fortunately, we have Monte Grappa just behind us here. So even in September, when it was still late summer, hot days, we could be up there at dawn in the morning and get quite cold conditions. So fortunately, we live in a place where we can test year round.
Yeah. And if you think about the AirCore and how it managed to be both air permeable and at the same time functionally windproof and water repellent, I mean, it seems like a contradiction at first glance.
Yeah, it feels like that. I think that's where the technology part comes in, right? So you think about that membrane itself, it's got nanofibers in it, right? You can put so little of those fibers into the fabric in the sandwich that you can build water resistance. The challenge is building that water resistance and still being air permeable, right? So I think the part where we had to go back and tweak the product, optimize it to what we are trying to solve for, water resistance was way easier to achieve. Okay. It's keeping that breathability to that optimum level. Like Steve said, I think during that first meeting we had, I think you had just launched one of those products that had a pretty high CFM. Right. So I think that data part that you all had done at Castelli to kind of bracket it, as I call it, you box the requirements, then it becomes much easier to focus on that and go after it. So that's the balancing part of the technology that we've got now, is allows you to really optimize for the need.
Because also with that nanofiber membrane, you just said it now, the importance that it plays in the garment's performance. Is that depending on how many of those nanofibers that you add to it is more for the water protection, or what is it?
Yeah, so it is, you're basically creating a tortuous path, right? You don't want straight holes. At the same time, you want the size of those holes to be small enough that water never goes through it. You get enough water resistance, but at the same time, air has to get through it. Like Steve was explaining, you're talking about a very specific amount of air that somebody in the bicycle is really going to face it, right? So it is just enough to cause evaporative cooling. That way, always I think we have joked around and said, keep the person dry inside out rather than outside in, right? So think about the thought process. I think, human body is going to respond to the conditions as quick as it can. How do we get that wetness out of the way? And that's where the engineering of that fibers, I mean, these nanofibers are about 500 times smaller than human hair. So how do you deposit that to the point where you get those fibers to sit in place, at the same time provide a compromise between the two properties, but from a rider point of view, best experience you can ever have?
Wow. Sorry for dragging you down the rabbit hole here, but I like that, everything you said. And I think you have also, because Steve has shown me a video of how some of the production process works, but I know you also have a lot of photos or renderings of these nanofibers. So I will leave a link in the podcast notes when we get to September, when this podcast will go live, that people can go and click on and go and check out, especially also the video, because it's super interesting. So Steve, back to the cyclist here. So you described AirCore as being engineered to vent and breathe with you. What role does movement play in activating the fabric's performance?
Yeah, actually, so two levels. Number one, of course, a cyclist is moving through the air, so there's a higher pressure of air on the front side of the garment. So, we had to try to engineer the fabric to work best with that level of air permeability. So we had to work really hard to not go too high, because when you're coming down a descent, it's a really fine line where you get optimum breathability, but not go over to where you're feeling the cold air coming in. So I think we hit that target really, really well. The other thing that is a little bit more tricky to explain of why it's working so well is that the amount of humidity you have on the inside of the garment it's even what we think about when you hear a weather report. You talk about today there's 70% relative humidity, right? That's quite a humid day. If it's a hot day at 70% humidity, you know it's going to be hot. If you go to Arizona where it's 10% relative humidity, it might be 40 degrees out or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, right? And it's hot, but you don't suffer as much. And so that humidity is really important. When there's less humidity outside than inside, then the membrane, the way it works with the airflow through, will push that humidity to the outside. It's actually an active trying to reach osmosis of the inside and outside humidity. The magic here happens because that humidity, when you hear the weather report, they always call it relative humidity. So that's a concentration of humidity relative to the temperature. So since you're actually warmer on the inside of the garment than the outside, there's a lot more moisture on the inside. And so it's quite actively pushing that across the barrier. It's amazing. Like at 30 degrees Celsius, the air can hold about 100 times more moisture than it can at 0 degrees. So yeah, so that's why your afternoon thunderstorms in the summer are so much more violent than winter rain. Yeah, because there's just that much more moisture. So the fact that you can have quite a bit more moisture on the inside of your garment and it's warm through this garment is really actively pushing it through. Sorry, that was a bit down the tech rabbit hole as well. Just in simple words, you stay a lot drier.
Yeah. No, I mean, I felt it myself. I know how it works. It's just all that explanation behind it and what is actually happening and going on, which is super interesting. And I'm sure also that, hopefully all the listeners are still hanging on tight here. Ramesh, AirCore is made with recycled materials and non-PFAS layers, membrane, and DWR treatments. What were some of the toughest technical challenges you faced in removing PFAS from the membranes and layers, and how difficult was it to achieve the level of some sustainability without compromising on performance?
Yeah, I think until Steve got this problem, he explained, we thought we kind of conquered PFAS 90% of the needs, because DWR treatments, there are multiple options we have, and Polartec got out of PFAS in December 2022. So then came the challenge of how do you get rid of from the membranes, especially the ones that needs to be breathable. That's where the processing challenge comes in, and what that PFAS really helps in creating those nanofibers and how you lay them became a challenge. So I think the second part B of getting rid of PFAS in this project was a bigger challenge than the fabric part that took us quite some time to get rid of. So I think the very drive of trying to still improve performance, which is what the end consumer cares, by making it more sustainable is something we are pushing as a brand. We're continuing to evolve in that area. And I think Castelli was a great partner for us for really pushing that boundary even further, because we could have gone in a completely different direction. Like Steve was talking about plan B. I had a plan B, honestly. I haven't talked to him yet. But so that's where I think is just, do good at the same time, make that performance component that is so critical. Can we make it better, right? So we feel like we've got a best solution rather than a better solution.
But yeah, I think it almost happened. I feel like we were a bit lucky too, because in like where we've been with older technologies, we just said, accepted it has to be waterproof. And then we tried to get the best compromise we could. And the sustainability forced us to think about the problem from a new standpoint of saying, no, there's like, we really need the breathability, and whatever waterproofness comes it's almost like we were ready to compromise the waterproofness. But what we found out is actually it's by doing the breathability, we can still maintain a surprisingly high level of waterproofness. And so it really does turn into the product that you can use every single day. If you do get caught in the rain, I've done 2-hour rides where it's raining solid the entire time and stayed completely dry on the inside. If you're going to have to go out and ride 5 hours in the rain, you might still reach for an actual rain shell. I think, the AirCore doesn't have an unlimited forever, nothing ever going to get a little bit wet on the inside. But for real life, what almost every cyclist is doing all the time, this is where they should be.
Yeah, because that was actually my next question. Touched on when it actually performs the best, AirCore. And I wanted to ask you the question, in what conditions or types of rides does AirCore really show its strength? I mean, coming back to what you're saying, let's say I'm going to go and head out for a 4-hour ride with some early hill climb efforts before settling into a 2-3 hour in zone 2. But the weather forecast is calling for light showers in the second half of the ride. It could also turn into heavier downpours. How would I leave home? What would I bring with me extra? You mentioned a rain cape or rain shell.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm living in somewhere like Portland or Seattle or Vancouver or Belgium or UK or Norway, I mean, all these places that have quite often you get some rain during a ride. AirCore is all you need. Okay. If you're in one of those places, or also other parts of the world where you're going to have solid rain for 5 hours, probably grab a rain shell. And I don't need to tell you that, because even if I told you AirCore would keep you dry, you're not going to believe me. You're going to go for a rain shell. And you'll be happy with a rain shell. Okay. But everything short of that solid rain, I mean, when you're doing the solid rain, right? If you're riding the Giro d'Italia, you're going to get one of those stages, right? If you go on a cycling tour in the Alps where you've organized your days and you have to go from hotel to hotel, and one of those days means you might have to ride in the rain for 5 hours, take a rain shell, okay? If you do a Gran Fondo and that day it happens to be raining the whole time, you're probably going to wear a rain shell, but everything else, it's AirCore. So, I mean, there's really 3 unique situations almost that you're going to be in. But, I mean, for most cyclists that don't find themselves in those situations, just go AirCore.
Yeah. Sounds like it is the dream jacket, dream fabric, everything, lightweight, breathable. So when we talk about breathability, can we put some numbers on the air permeability, for everyday cyclists, and how important that actually is, with MVTR? If there are any numbers, is there anything we want to talk about here? Any facts? You guys are both laughing. So for those of you who listen to the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast, definitely go over to YouTube, because you should have seen Steve and Ramesh's face when I asked that question.
So I think that's where the misleading part of the whole last 30 plus years has been, right? When you call breathable, typically 2 test methods are there, and every brand, every ingredient brand, every garment brand would report a number, right? It's usually 20,000 plus. In that point, AirCore is 30 plus thousand. So there's no trade-off in that whatsoever. Now, the part where that breathability to me as a technical person is it moisture vapor breathable, or is it air permeable? Entirely 2 ends of the spectrum. So when you say air permeable, you literally have air as your carrier of your moisture outside your body, right?
Yeah.
It's flowing. Then people's mind always goes through wind resistance and all that kind of stuff, but that's where you optimize it and engineering it to exactly what we need, and boxing it is so important. Then in that case, what you're looking at is, let's talk about what is important for the rider rather than the way we measure things in the past. So, the way Steve positioned it for this whole project, it does, a simple analogy comes to my mind is, an artist knows what the final picture looks like. We were building pixel by pixel, honestly. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you build that pixel, you got to think about, not what people did 20 years ago. Yeah. Technology advances faster than we could keep up with. What do we do the best we can to address really? I think that's where air permeability came into play. And we said, we got to hit the optimal level we need. And that data, obviously, with all the testing that Steve and Castelli has done, that's where it came to the definition point. That's why I remember him I kept going back, okay, I can hit this. What about water resistance, right? So I think that's the pivotal point, I think, is redefining what the jacket really does. So air permeability is the key component for us to really achieve this point of performance.
Yeah. I mean, to me, MVTR, there's those moisture void transport rate, is a major. It's a laboratory test that shows how much moisture the membrane can absorb and then evaporate over a 24-hour period. And it's actually somewhat valid for low activity or low intensity activities, low sweat activities. So if you're looking for a waterproof jacket to go hiking really walking, where you're not really sweating that much. Your body's still releasing a little bit of sweat, and it's okay for that. When we get into higher intensity activities, running, cycling, ski mountaineering, anything where you're actually sweating, let's say your heart rate's going above 140, 150 beats per minute, you need more than that. And so MVTR, though, unfortunately in the industry, it's become an easy test and easy numbers to hit. Yeah. Really there's probably thousands of suppliers out there that are making fabrics that hit good MVTR numbers. But Ramesh just used an analogy. I'll use another one in the case of what we're doing. To me, MVTR is like Dieselgate, right? It's when Volkswagen and Audi made cars that were really good at hitting that test, but they were cheating, right? And an MVTR number without air permeability for a high intensity aerobic sport is like Dieselgate. You got some great numbers in the test, but you're not getting real protection. MVTR without air permeability means that you're wet inside. It only works when you're wet. And so what we're trying to do is keep you dry from the inside. And so MVTR, I don't know if I see an MVTR number, I kind of skip over it or laugh a little bit because it's not what we need.
No, exactly. Maybe you also want to explain a little bit about the water column, that a lot of people get fixed on that, and what actually really means to a cyclist, which is a lot less.
Yeah, so water column, this is a measure of waterproofness, right? And when they say water column, there isn't actually, in the labs, there's not actually a column of water, right? There's a machine that will increase, basically it holds fixed a piece of fabric and will builds a seal around that fabric and then puts pressurized water against that membrane or the fabric to see how much pressure it can hold. And so, and then it's expressed in terms of water column. So the standard accepted measure from the outdoor industry for calling something waterproof is 10,000 millimeters of water column. I don't know why they say 10,000 millimeters. It's easier to say 10 meters.
10 mils.
So, but if you imagine a water column 10 meters high, just think when you as a kid, you dive down to the bottom of a swimming pool that's at 2 meters and the pressure in your ears, right? And so 10 meters of water is a lot of pressure. But in reality, the outdoor industry considers 10 meters of water pressure as the standard that it needs to be able to call itself waterproof. But rain actually falls at a pressure equivalent of about 800 millimeters, so 80 centimeters. So not even 1 meter. It's not a super hard pressure, and that's actual rain. Hurricane force winds goes a bit higher, but what we encounter is actually below 1 meter of water column. So when Ramesh really pressed me, it's like, what water column do we need? I answered, in my experience, even a 2,000 millimeter, 2 meter it keeps you functionally dry. And on here, we're up above 5,000. So, we're actually 6 times the pressure of rain. So we're at a level that we didn't, at least I wasn't even hoping to get to that level. I was hoping to get to 2.
Wow. So I can imagine if I was one of Castelli's, many Castelli fans out there, an amateur cyclist, and also maybe some of our sponsored athletes like Soudal Quick-Step, I would be asking myself, when do I get products, fall weather, winter training products, winter jackets with AirCore technology? I'll be asking myself that question right now.
Sure. The Soudal guys will be getting it in this fall. And so we're going to move up the delivery of their 2026 kit. And then, through all our other sponsored athletes, but it's available in September to everybody else. So, but only in Castelli and our sister brand Sportful.
Correct. So while we talk about then also products here, because there's also one of the reasons why we didn't get Soudal into the products at the beginning of the year was because, again, as we said earlier, we only had very few meters of fabric. And everything just came out last minute. But can imagine the guys are just eager to try something new. And I still remember the reactions from the pros when we only gave Lampard and Asgreen as the only 2 people on the team, the GABA R, to test as the first. And everyone was so jealous. So now I can imagine everyone else just sitting here and waiting, eager to get the AirCore products. So, but also talk about products then, Steve. In the Castelli collection, we have 4 jackets and then 1 tight.
Mm-hmm. Plus a glove and a shoe cover.
And the shoe cover.
Oh, yeah.
So if you go look at the top of the line when it comes to jackets,
the key product that everyone should be looking at is the Perfetto ROS 3. So ROS stands for rain or shine. This is a product that's good for sunny conditions, dry conditions, all the way to rain. And this is a fairly lightweight jacket, but with the level of protection and breathability, really down to around freezing, you can put a long sleeve base layer. If you really take it down below freezing, you might add a second layer. And we've got some good options for that too with a Polartec Alpha. So, this is a product that if you put a couple layers underneath it, you can take it to well below freezing. So this could be your only jacket. Almost more for convenience sake, we have the Alpha 150 jacket, which is our cold weather jacket. It's got the Alpha insulation built into it. So this is really the jacket from around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius on down. And it's really made to be the ultimate winter jacket. Soren, how many pro athletes do we have telling us this is their favorite Castelli product? A lot.
Yeah.
So with now upgrading to the AirCore, we get more stretch, more breathability, more water protection. This really is the ultimate winter jacket. So it's a little bit of a double up of the Perfetto, because with Perfetto and layers, you can get to the same result. It's just more complicated. If you just want to have that amazing jacket you pull off the shelf, it doesn't even feel like you're wearing a heavy jacket. That's the one. Then we also have the Competizione jacket, which has a heavier weight fleece liner. So if you want a kind of a dependable workhorse of a jacket that's really going to take you through all winter long in colder climates. So it's an insulated jacket, but with the same membrane technology. And then really the entry level to the AirCore technology is a product we call the Entrata jacket. So we've just brought the AirCore fabric to the front, to the sleeves, to the shoulders of the fabric, or to the jacket with a breathable back, so a thermal back. Starting in from an entry level all the way up to the top of the line Alpha 150 jacket.
And then we got the tight, and then we have also the accessories.
The very cold weather tight. So if you're out there riding your bike below freezing, the big benefit of this tight now is that you have Polartec microgrid heavier weight fleece on the inside. So it's keeping that membrane a little bit off your skin. And then we're taking advantage of the high stretch of AirCore, because the membrane itself can elongate to 3 times its beginning state. So the limit we have on the stretch is coming from the textile component, not from the membrane. But as Ramesh said, we're still early days with this technology. So, but already we're at, I believe the fabric on the tight can stretch almost to double its original length. So we got a great stretch to movement with the tight. You've got the breathability, you've got the windproofness. But those guys, we've got a few of our ambassadors that are out there in Norway and in Ottawa. So these guys every weekend going out and doing 150 kilometers at minus 20 degrees. It's like crazy. This is for you. So initial launch is just with the Castelli collection, but coming a little bit later in fall of 25, we're bringing this into custom. So we can fully print it. You lose a tiny bit of air permeability, a tiny bit of water protection, but it's still by far the best product on the market.
And then it's 100% eco-friendly. Fantastic. Yes. You mentioned, Steve, that AirCore on the market today, there are only 2 brands that have access to this fabric technology. And one is Castelli and then our sister brand Sportful for the cycling category, correct? Yeah. Okay. So, guys, before wrapping up the episode, I want to touch a little bit on, again, sustainability, and then we look a bit at the future. But Ramesh, first on sustainability is clearly central to AirCore and Polartec. Can you talk about the environmental thinking behind the fabric beyond just removing PFAS?
Yeah, so I think besides the membrane, which is the key performance part, the fabric parts is recycled. So it is polyester bottle recycled right now. Eventually, longer term thinking is how do you make this jacket more address the circularity question as well? Because at the end of the day, they will come where you want to buy another jacket from Castelli, right? So what do you do with the old one? So that is the thought process that's going behind it as well, to think about being very careful of what component goes into making the jacket. Because as an ingredient brand, we got to be cognizant of that, of what is coming in the future, not now, 2 years, 3 years from now. So that's what we have done with this product. And as we evolve with the 2.0 eventually, then I think that is going to drive that even further and further to the point where we want to have a jacket that you can actually take it, recycle back into yarn, and make use of it. I mean, we're not far away from that at this point. We're getting mighty close to it. So I think that's the longer term thought process. You know, as I said, it's a pixel at a time, but it's slowly we're building that infrastructure and also have the capability to do that.
Yeah. What about you, Steve? Do you think consumers are becoming more aware and more demanding when it comes to performance sustainability, where maybe a couple of years ago, you wouldn't probably look for such a product, a sustainable product, if you would lose marginal gains or performance gains?
Yeah. No, I think the big innovation here is that being sustainable is not a compromise, right? You don't have to accept lower performance to be sustainable. I mean, here you're actually making a objective increase in performance and you're sustainable. I think a lot of the, especially the higher level cyclists in the past have made that, maybe even that conscious decision that like, I'm willing to spend part of my environmental footprint on my cycling hobby. Whether that's from our bikes. I mean, almost everyone reading or listening to this podcast probably has a carbon bike in their garage. If you had a steel bike, you could just melt that thing down and make another one, right? So everyone here has made that decision, and I'm super excited that where we are today with the PFAS-free and the recycled content and increased performance, we're at the next level. Someday we're going to be able to take back a Perfetto jacket, melt it down, and make a new one. That'll be that'll even a harder challenge, but that's the goal.
Yeah.
But it's cool that we can actually make a big improvement without compromising performance.
Exactly, that's very important. Ramesh, do you see then AirCore setting a new standard for the industry, and how far? What you're aware of are some of the other brands behind Polartec at the moment, or slowly catching up?
I think we are at a moment where sustainability is coming in, right? And then on top of it, redefining what that really means rather than what is available. Like Steve said, it's kind of a reset in a lot of ways to think about, let's focus on the end user. what is critical for them, let them keep them on the bike longer amount of time. And then I think that same kind of a thought process goes into everything we are working on at Polartec. And, so far I haven't found a reason to compromise on because it is sustainable, right? I think that push will continue to see more and more us talk about that. So I think that's where I think it's key to be in the front line, really pushing these type of changes. Otherwise, it's a Band-Aid approach. We fix a hole. There's only so much Band-Aid you can put in there eventually, right? So I think the key learning for us in this project was really going back to the core of defining what we want to solve for. And it happens to be the one that the guy on the bike has been facing for so long, right? So let's address the core of that problem. And I think it opens up, like Steve said, cycling is one of the areas. I mean, every high aerobic activity has the same fundamental problem, right? How do we take this technology and further elevate it to performance levels where it's always been a compromise?
Yeah. So if AirCore is setting a new standard in the future, where do you see then the next frontier in breathable weather protection heading?
So this sets the standard in cycling, which one of the high aerobic activity, and there are others, right? So I think resetting those expectations, I think the end user feedback has been so critical, right? Yeah. We can envision in a conference room and talk about, hey, this is what we want, but always I think the feedback from the end user is the validation finally. As an inventor, you sit there and you think about and you dream about stuff, but the proof of the pudding, so to speak, is a person who come back and says, I'm not even wet anymore, right? And I think that's where the other industries are starting to rethink now. And once this product launches and the reviews we get, that kind of validates the thinking behind the hypothesis that we have used to get here, it will continue to evolve. And then now, how can you go and make it even more sustainable is where my head is. And there are, we can do some things now that we have learned from this process that would allow us to further, improve this technology beyond what it is today.
Yeah. And I can imagine already, Steve, your head is already spinning with a lot of ideas for the future or innovations that you might see coming. I don't know if there's anything here that you can already unveil today.
Yeah, well, winter 26 is already well on the path. So there's some really cool new things coming there. And then honestly, I think where we are for winter 26 is just taking what we've done so far and applying it better. And then, there's new frontiers to hit going forward beyond that. But I think we've hit a pretty special plateau already.
Yeah.
From which to build a next round.
Absolutely.
It's a big Castelli Polartec partnership, and I will see a lot more products and product ideas and concepts evolving over the coming years. So I think it's also a great way here to wrap up this episode here. But before we wrap it up, Steve, if you could sum up Polartec AirCore in one sentence to riders and athletes, what would it be?
It's a game changer that makes fall and winter riding just completely accessible. The beauty of it is you won't even feel you have it on.
Nice. I think it's a really good way to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time. And Ramesh, thank you so much for coming all the way from the US here to Italy for meeting with us and also recording this podcast.
Absolutely. Would not miss it for the world. Thank you.
It was an honor. Thank you, man. And thanks for everything. And we really appreciate this collaboration, commitment in changing the way that cyclists dress and riding in greater comfort in all kinds of conditions. To all the listeners, I will leave links in the podcast notes to both the website then of Polartec with all the videos and technical stuff, but also on the Castelli Cycling with all the products that Steve, he mentioned early on. And of course, also to go and check out our custom website for more information. So guys, thank you again. It's been an honor to have you on.
Thank you.